So why do you want to strain and feel have more danger when you're already filthy rich? As Warren says, what difference does it make to him if he has an extra 0 on his tombstone?
But Charlie, for return on invested capital, isn't that already taking into account leverage though? Because return on equity is usually enhanced by leverage. Return on invested capital is not necessarily enhanced by leverage.
Well, no, of course everybody would rather have a business with a high return on capital.
Wall Street Journal, what's your habits?
I read 3 or 4 newspapers when I get up in the morning, and then I always have 2 or 3 books that I'm reading. I kind of go back and forth between them. And that's what I do. Yeah, that's what I've done all my life.
What are your 4 papers?
Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Financial Times, LA Times.
No Washington Post? No one would be upset.
No Washington Post.
Well, I heard you speak about
Well, like going to medical school, that's a lot of work. You're not living very high or this or that, but later you're a doctor and have a better life. That's deferred gratification.
So, Charlie, you're the chairman of this American hospital. Do you have any recommendations or any suggestions to lower insurance prices, maybe?
Well, that's been I took that because it was basically a losing hand. And I play so many winning hands that I thought I should force myself to play a losing hand. And I must say it's been very difficult.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Do you believe in like a single healthcare payer system, or?
I think a single payer health system would work a lot better, yes. I think it will eventually come. I think the existing system is a ridiculous Rube Goldberg. It's a ridiculous system. Ridiculous system.
How should we help our children to avoid envy and jealousy?
Avoid what?
Envy and jealousy.
Well, you can't.
What's your go-to?
We don't have one way of doing it. We have certain things we avoid because we don't think we have the competency to deal with them. And we have certain things we kind of like because we're used to them. And so we don't have just one set of rules. We don't have any formulas that are exact or anything like that. And some of the stuff we do, we just know it's a little better than our alternatives. We're doing all kinds of stuff now that we would not have done. We never would have Apple stock in the old days. He seemed like very straightforward. But you say I get 1 million letters from people who want to go to work for Berkshire or want to come work. I sometimes get a check. They'll send me, here's $50,000. I'll pay this to work for you. I send the $50,000 back. I will say that it's a kind of a brash thing to do, and I kind of admire it because it's kind of a smart-ass stunt. It's something of a smart-ass when I was young myself. But I'm not looking for another starting helper or something. I'm playing out the end game. Anybody who's playing anything else but an end game when they're 93 is crazy. It's an end game.
Charlie, can you
to recognize that he has some flaws.
Okay, so you bet against the jockey, not against the horse necessarily.
Well, no, everything about, because I don't, McKinsey, that's Skilling came out of McKinsey. There are a lot of manipulative types of McKinsey.
So is it just simply an observation of the people more so than the quantitative factors? You don't need to look at the balance sheet when you're looking at the person.
Well, I could see the chain letter aspects of the game.
Okay.
And the huge leverage and the huge, you're sort of building a chain letter. It's intrinsically a sort of dishonorable thing to do. Because in nature, then you're doing something that can't continue on its own motion, you're making it look like it will. So it's intrinsically sort of dishonorable. So I don't like chain letter operators. I don't like drunks. I don't like people that puff and lie. I don't like people that raise prices on drugs that people have to have by 500% overnight just as though it were. Just a lot of flags were flying.
Charlie,
Yeah.
I work with Yahoo Finance. My name's Julia. We've seen a lot of folks boycotting retailers because they sell Trump branded merchandise, and then vice versa because
I wouldn't
Starbucks
do
wants
that.
to. Have you seen these boycotts?
I don't like all that. Basically, I'm not in favor of young people agitating them and trying to change the whole world because I think they know so much. I think young people should learn more and shout less. So I'm not sympathetic to anybody. Young people are out in the streets agitating, and I say the hell with them. You know, that's not my system. I think you can, if you got Hitler or something, you can go out and agitate. But short of that, I think the young people ought to learn more and shout less.
Did you personally
They ought to act more like Chinese.
Did you personally know Richard Feynman? And what
Yes,
do you
I
think
knew
of
him
Richard?
slightly, very slightly.
What do you think of him?
Well, he was a genius. On the other hand, he was a screwball. He absolutely was nuts about screwing a lot of different women and going after the wives of his own graduate students. That's disgusting. So he had this blind spot. No, in physics and teaching, he was one of the noblest people we've ever had. But in his personal life, he was a little nuts.
Charlie, I have a question about real estate and investments in the past.
Way back.
When I look at real estate or stocks, real estate is just easier to evaluate. You know, you comps, cash flow, and replacement cost. It just seems an easier game than the equities market, provided that you don't use too
Real
much
estate?
debt. Yeah, real estate.
The trouble with real estate is everybody else understands it, and the people who are you're dealing with and competing with it, they've specialized in a little 12 blocks or a little industry. They know more about the industry than you do. So, and then you've got a lot of bullshitters and liars and brokers. So it's not a bit easy. It's not a bit easy.
Sorry, going back.
The trouble is, if it's easy, all these people, a whole bunch of ethnics that love real estate. You know, Asians, Hasidic Jews, Indians from India, they all love real estate. They're smart people. And they know everybody and they know the tricks. And getting this, you don't even see the good offerings in real estate. They show that the big investors are dealing. It's not an easy game to play from a beginner's point of view, real estate. Whereas stocks, you're equal with everybody if you're smart. In real estate, you don't even see the opportunities when you're a young person starting out. They go to others. The stock market's always open. It's in venture capital. Sequoia sees the good stuff. You could open an office, Joe Schmo, venture capitalists, startups come to me, that starved to death. You know, you got to figure out what your competitive position is and what you're choosing. Real estate has a lot of difficulties. And those Patels from India that buy all the motels, they know more about motels than you do. They live in the goddamn motel with their family. They pay no income taxes. They don't pay much in workers' compensation. And every dime they get, they fix up the thing and buy another motel. You want to compete with the Patels? Not I.
Do you like
Not I.
Charlie, I guess these questions, I wanted to dig into this a little bit more. You and Warren, throughout your business history, you were incredible at judging people, right? Whether it's Mrs. B.
We were pretty good, yes.
What was it that you and he looked for? You know, and what were mistakes that you made that you learned from along the way in judging? You know, who would be good business partners to work with?
Well, first there's some very good people in Warren's family, one of whom I worked under, who was Fred Buffett. So we had people we knew well that were really noble people. So we had bases to compare people against. And we had bases to compare people against in terms of capacity and talent and so forth. So we had a lot of data in our heads that helped us. And I think we had some genetic advantages. Not IQ points, just absolute quirks of nature that made us better.
Like, what was it, Harry Bottle? What was his name?
Yes, Harry Bottle, one of my earliest
Tell me
friends.
about Harry Bottle and what you saw in him that was so.
Well, I'd worked with him in an electronics business that got in terrible difficulties. And he'd help us work out of that business trouble by downsizing. He knew how to do it. And Warren had a business that needed downsizing, and Warren did not know how to do it. So I put those two together. Well, of course, it worked well.
Charlie, could you talk about the episode at Salomon Brothers and what you really learned about people from there as well? Because I know
What I learned is easy money and easy leverage and so forth in investment banking creates a culture that's full of envy, jealousy, craziness, overreaching, over leveraging. It's a very hard business to manage, investment banking. It was out of control. The envy was these people went berserk. If one jerk got $4 million some year, the other guy was furious that he only got $3 million. And they just seethed and caused trouble. It was a very difficult business to manage. I think a lot of easy money that comes into finance just ruins practically everybody. No thanks. I'm all right with the coffee.
Charlie, any thoughts on Apple Corporation?
Well, it's a very odd thing for us to do, and obviously we've got no special insights as to how sticky Apple's business is. Apple whole supply chain is like one man with 2 million employees. That's very peculiar, and the man is not perfect. And on the other hand, Apple has a very sticky bunch of customers. Will they be able to keep that going? And if so, how long? I don't know, but I think the chances are pretty good it's going to be quite sticky. And that's why we bought it. But as I say, we may have a slight edge in our favor there. But it's not a big edge. We're doing that because we don't find the stuff we used to find where we knew we couldn't lose. Apple, we've merely got what we think is a little edge. We don't have a big insight that can't fail. But if you got the money, you have to put it somewhere, and you can't find what you used to like, you have to put it with what's best available. It's a nice problem to have so much money. We shouldn't really be complaining about it. It got harder. The reason it got harder is we got so much money. When we bought that Coca-Cola, it was 1 million shares. It took us 8 months to buy 1 million shares of Coke. We were buying like half the full trading every day. It's hard to get into all of these big blocks.
Are you good friends with John Bogle, or do you?
No, maybe I've met him once or something. I basically think he's right about his basic approach. The other people are not going to match the averages, and he is, and and his idea has succeeded, and he's succeeded, and he was right. On the other hand, he's kind of a one-trick pony. I don't think he has another. He had one good idea in his lifetime, and he wrote it very hard. That's all you need. He's an interesting example. He had one good idea. He pushed it hard and it worked. You don't need a lot of good ideas, but you do need one.
Can you talk a little about BYD and
what do you want to talk about?
You would think
That again was something we never would have done in the early days. When I got into that through Lee, BYD had been pounded down so hard it was a Graham type stock. Now it was a Graham type stock in wasn't exactly a startup, but a small company.
would you see BYD doing the infrastructure here in the U.S., or would they?
No. BYD's now going into monorails. They'll do monorails in China.
They wouldn't do that here in the U.S. though?
Oh, they would, but I think they would be pretty dumb. Monorails in the U.S. have been a peanut business forever. Hard. In China, they can get permits. China, they just go do it.
How about energy storage?
Well, the BYD's big in energy storage already.
Is that happening here in the U.S.?
Of course, everybody's going to do energy storage. You got to time shift the power if it comes from either the sun or the wind.
How would you?
Of course, there's going to be a lot of storage.
This might sound like Max Planck chauffeur kind of knowledge, but when it comes to finding the sellout price, the intrinsic value of the company, you want to compare that to the market cap.
Of what?
Just BYD, let's say. How would you?
Oh, that's hard. And again, we've learned things there. When we bought in, we could see that a venture capitalist would have paid 3 times as much for that kind of a deal. So it was cheap as a venture and we could see it was a good venture capital thing because the guy had worked minor miracles already. So that was a cheap stock, but it was one that took some special insight. And I wouldn't have had it, Lee would. It's Lee Lu who found that. And once we were in it, I got to know Wan Chunfu, even though he can't speak a word of English. And Wan Chunfu is a genius. And he's shrewd. And he's honest, and he's fanatic, and he loves his company, and so on and so on and so on. And what he can do is just incredible. He learns whole new technologies. And
so it's mostly qualitative?
It's partly what they have, and it's partly what it's quality. Partly I'm betting on the horseman there. I mean, because he's got a bunch of Chinese, young Chinese. You can't believe what those employees do. He's got 230,000 Chinese working for him. Berkshire only has 460,000 employees. I mean, what? It's a lot of employees, and they can do things you can't believe. You look at those young Chinese girls.
Would you buy the whole company if they'd allow that? Or
I don't think so, because one of the reasons he succeeds is the Chinese are proud of an 8th son of a peasant that creates a little company all himself and is doing so far. And a lot of the other stuff they're doing, joint ventures and automobiles, they're joint ventures with the West that was already ahead. So in a sense, they love and are proud of their own man, the son of the peasant that did it all himself, and it's still Chinese. So I wouldn't want to destroy that Chinese image by buying BYD. It works better the way it's going. But you're right, I'm betting to some extent on a person. I was in their battery separator plant. There are about 5 companies on earth that don't make battery separators. That goo comes by laterally and hangs together through its own chemical something cohesion. It's the most complicated damn process you ever saw. It's very hard to do. If you don't do it exactly right, the battery fails. He just learned that. Boom, what he needs to know, he just figures out. There aren't many people that can do that.
Do you see similar qualities in an Elon Musk or somebody of that sort?
No, I think that Wan Chunfu knows what he can do and what would be really difficult. And I think Elon Musk thinks he can do anything. And I'd rather bet on the man. So he has some limit to his self-appraisal.
Do you think Mr. Bezos knows the limits of his skills?
Way better than you think. Bezos is utterly brilliant and utterly remorselessly ambitious. I would never bet against Jeff Bezos.
Did you ever meet him or have like a...
Yeah, I've met Bezos.
You mentioned earlier about Coca-Cola becoming a little bit less efficient than they used to be.
For the first 100 years, all that caffeinated, carbonated sugar water with the same flavor just swept the earth. Every year more money came in. They were drowning in money for the better part of 100 years. Of course it was interesting, but of course that kind of spoils you. And now the basic stuff is going the other way.
Do you think Coca-Cola and Pepsi still win the sparkling water battle?
I don't know. I think they're both very strong companies, and I think they both have a lot of momentum in place. And
do you think if they were run by 3G, they would do better or worse?
Well, I guarantee they'd do a lot better the second year. Gone.
If Glotz came to you and asked you to make a new company today.
Who?
Glotz. there's an article turning 2 million into 2 trillion. It's about creating a company that would be worth 2 trillion.
Yeah, I know. I gave the talk.
He wrote it to you today.
What?
If you came to you today, you wanted to do another company, what would you tell him?
Well, I wouldn't do that because I did that only retrospectively. In other words, I knew the outcome when I created the story. Of course, that's a lot easier than starting now and projecting the future. So I can explain the past a lot better than I can predict the future. Surprise, surprise. And by the way, that talk, it was a total failure when I gave it. It's been a total failure ever since. I think it's absolutely right, and there's a lot to be learned in it, and a few nuts like you make us get something out of it. But in terms of the greater world, I bored the people. Some of them fell asleep. It was the most failed talk I ever gave. And so I published it when they did Per Charlie's Almanac, because I still think the basic lessons are right. It's just it's hard to understand. Most people don't understand basic psychology very well.
Charlie, looks like you hit a home run with the Physics Institute in Santa Barbara.
Well, all I did was create a building. They already had the institute.
But it looks fantastic, the whole idea and everything.
It's wonderful. It's amazing what you can do if you have a lot of intelligence and unlimited money.
How about a Munger library somewhere? A Munger library, like a presidential library, a Munger library. How about
No,
that?
I'm working on another student building in UCSB.
Charlie, what scientific innovation is going on right now that you're really excited about, and what's one thing that you're really scared about?
I really am deeply aware of this agricultural revolution, and everybody takes it for granted. It wasn't, it isn't like agricultural, productivity had ever increased by 300% in a few decades. I mean, it was just amazing what happened. And of course, the world needed it terribly. And so I'm quite impressed. And more of that's coming. So all this stuff about gene splicing to make plants grow better and gene splicing to make domestic animals produce better, all that's coming. Some is starting to work already. And they'll push this crossbreeding of seeds in the ordinary way a few more. Now, it's a hugely important thing that's happening, and the world needs it terribly. And it changed the whole world for everybody. We couldn't have this civilization without the food. And there's not that much arable land. We have to get more product out of our existing land. And our existing land, the way we're farming it intensively, is degrading. And the reason we produce all this stuff is we pour chemicals and so forth into the land. Fungicides, herbicides. And at any rate, insecticides too. But it's just amazing what's happened. And how we created the miracle rice, the miracle grains. It's just, and so I'm quite impressed by the fact they keep doing that stuff. And to have 1% of the people produce all the food for America on their farms, when we used to have 80% of the people, it's just a huge, huge change in the human condition. And we'd all be doing stoop labor instead of running around in airplanes to hear people talk. If it weren't for all these revolutions that our predecessors created for us. So I just find that quite interesting. And we need it. Costco, buys a lot of produce now from vegetables grown in hothouses. And by and large, those are ethnic, those are Chinese. The Chinese who are good, they, funny 6-acre hothouse, they really know where every damn blade is growing, and it's not that different from rice growing. I mean, they're just very good at it. And that has a lot of potential that is coming. So I like the agricultural stuff. Most people just ignore it. We take it for granted. But I'm quite impressed by it. And
America sufficiently proving to be a ham sandwich business in the last
What?
Is America sufficiently proving to be a ham sandwich enterprise in the last few months?
Well, there's a lot of good left in the American economy and the American people, partly because we're taking in so many talented people from these other nations. Think we've taken in from China, India, even Japan. It's a lot of human talent. And in the old days, we got the poor people, you know, and that was harder because, and now the Chinese that come here, they're not the poor Chinese. They're the well-to-do Chinese, and the children of successful Chinese families that get high grades and so forth. The same from India. Every once in a while, I meet an untouchable who has just gotten out through the Maine Technical Institute of India and succeeded. But most of the Indians I meet are all from the upper castes of India. We're sucking the brains out of India. And of course, that's good for us.
Is that a tragedy
Same
for
with China. Same with China.
Is that a tragedy for China and India, though?
What?
Is that a tragedy for China and India, though?
Well, they got a lot of people. They have a lot of brains left. You know, you can't think about two countries. People shortage is not. When you can sift a population that big, you'll get some smart people.
Charlie, do you have any like mental checklists that help you stick with that or prepare before you get to your opportunity?
Well, if you haven't prepared, you won't have the courage to seize it. When I bought all that stock that the Daily Journal has in like one day, you know, I knew something about the Bank of America. I've lived in the culture. I've known the Bank of America bankers. I know a lot about what's right with it and what's wrong with it. So I knew a lot. I knew a lot about Wells Fargo. I knew a lot about U.S. Bank. So.
Did you pay cash, or did you have to leverage up that day?
No, I had cash.
Do you have any thoughts on Chipotle and the food safety issues there?
What?
Chipotle and the activist involvement of that company and the food safety issues?
Well, I do know this, that if you run a business where people have to trust your food, you just can't afford to have a scandal in food quality. Costco just sweats blood to avoid. Now, every once in a while, we get a few cases of some fairly minor. Nobody gets away with it, but we just are fanatic about preventing it and stepping out hard when it happens and so forth. And they got careless at that in the fried chicken company in China, Yum brand. And of course, it hurt them terribly. You can't afford to have a scandal if you're selling food. And when the people adulterated the baby formula in China killed the people that did that. They're dead, and they didn't take a long time doing it. No, a lot of appeals or anything. Kill our babies to make a little more money. Oh, you never will be missed. I have a little list. Off they went to the great beyond.
Charlie, what about TransDigm?
What? I don't know TransDigm. What is TransDigm?
So TransDigm's so they're a supplier of aircraft parts to Boeing and to Airbus and to aerospace and defense companies. And there have been comparisons recently between TransDigm and Valiant, and was curious if you had any thoughts on whether those comparisons.
Oh, I don't know anything about TransDigm, but of course, it's generally a little easier to cheat the government than it is to cheat anybody else. And so a lot of people try and cheat the government on defense contracts. And of course, their suppliers also, with the whole culture, has some cheating. So I regard it as a little bit dangerous territory.
So does
but I know nothing about TransDigm.
Did Valiant clean itself out, or is it still a sewer?
Well, I'm sure it's way better. You'd stop stealing if it already cut off your left hand. You wouldn't want to lose the other.
Charlie, did you know Sumner Redstone in law school, and how do you think he could have handled his succession plans differently for his businesses?
Well, I never knew Sumner Redstone, but I followed him because he was a little ahead of me in law school. But Sumner Redstone was a very peculiar man. Almost nobody has ever liked him. He's a very hard-driven, tough tomato, and basically almost nobody's ever liked him, including his wives and his children. and he's just gone through life. There's an old saying, screw them all except 6 and save those for pallbearers. And that is the way Sumner Redstone went through life. And I think he was into the pallbearers because he lived so long. So, one thing I've used Sumner Redstone all my life as an example of what not to do. He started with some money, and he was very shrewd and hard-driven. You know, he saved his life by hanging while the fire was on his hands. He's a very determined, high IQ maniac, but nobody likes him, and nobody ever did. And the woman he paid for sex in his old age cheated him. You know, he's had one disappointment after another. Yeah, but it's not a life you want to admire. Yeah, I've used Sumner Redstone all my life as an example of what I don't want to be. But for sheer talent, drive, and shrewdness, you would hardly find anybody stronger than Sumner. And he didn't care if people liked him. I don't care if 95% of the people don't like me, but I really need the other 5. Sumner just...
Many of them are here right now.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on some of the smaller networks with quality content, like Viacom, for example, with strong brands? Any thoughts on their future?
I have the general impression, based on 60 years of experience in the neighborhood, that the movie business is a tough business. Now, a lot of people have done well at it, but I don't know how to create a Star Wars. I don't know how to sell it for a price like that. I want to let somebody else make money in those difficult ways. I regard the movie business as a tough business. Now, if it's your only way up and you're good at it, why? Because you have to do it. But I don't even think about those things I'm not good at. I don't. Take Netflix. Who did House of Cards?
Kevin Spacey. Oh, producer though. Who's the producer?
I mean, the guy who gave him the money.
Reed Hastings.
Yes, Netflix did, but HBO turned it down. Oh, and that was really stupid. It had worked in England. It couldn't fail. But I'm just not attracted. I don't want to try and be Reed Hastings or.
Charlie, did you know Saul Price, the founder of?
Very well.
Is he a good guy? Or?
Very good guy. Cranky, but very, very good human being. Honorable, very honorable. What he liked about Costco, he thought it was such an honorable way to make money. To try and make the stuff you're selling very good and very cheap for the people who bought it. And he was right, it was honorable, and he did it very well. So, no, I like, but he was very good.
Do you think Walmart can turn into Sears?
Well, not for a long time.
Charlie, do you think business moats are becoming more fragile with technology and transparency?
Well, our ancestors were pretty good at creating fragile moats too. I think it's natural that what's up in one era. Think of what I've lived through in terms of people. DuPont looked impregnable. General Motors was the strongest corporation in the world. Kodak was one of the boom, boom, but they're gone. Xerox. I mean, it is hard to keep winning. And the world keeps changing. Look, the Daily Journal, it's hard. Imagine going into computer programming, dealing with a lot of agencies all over the world, including South Australia. A little company like this. It's not a bit easy. And if we hadn't done it, we'd just be one more dying newspaper. And
can you talk more about the airlines and what's changed from a couple of decades ago to now?
Well, I don't know that much about it, but I do know that it's more concentrated now, and there's no real substitute for it. It isn't like we have a substitute for air travel. And it's down to relatively few players. In the old days, they could always start a new airline. They hire nothing but young people. They pay the pilots less. They don't have a union. And they could just start hitting the prices. They just kept ruining the business over and over again. And even now, Southwest is just starting to go to Hawaii. So the vicious competition is continuing, including people doing it for governments own these airlines and do it to show off how strong they are. So I don't regard it as a perfect model, and I don't think it's the greatest idea we ever had. It's just something that, considering how pounded they were and how the world has changed a little, we thought, as I say, we had a little advantage by that particular gamble. But it is not that it's not a cinch.
Is there an outlook on oil prices embedded in that investment?
I don't think oil prices will make that much difference over the long term to the. It's not that. If the kerosene doubles in price, I don't think over time, I don't think it matters that much to the airlines. It's still, it's you put 100 people in an airliner and fly somewhere, it's pretty efficient. And you can do a lot of flights per day. And it's worth a lot of money. People will take the trip. And not going to be a new airport in Shanghai, you know. A lot of the airports are fixed, and a lot of them are out of capacity. It's obviously better than it was in the past. Whether it's good enough so it will do well, I don't know. Also, if it starts working, you get paid in advance for the tickets, so there's no credit. And a lot of people lease the airliners, so that if you make money, you can pile up pretty rapidly in cash.
Is there a reason JetBlue wasn't in there?
I don't know anything about individual airlines. Neither does we bought a bunch.
I know.
You know, it was a sector bet. It's not a bet on an individual airline.
When industries like airlines or railroads rationalize and turn around, how do you and Warren know? I mean, have you been keeping up with it for 50 years?
It was easy to say. In the railroad, we waited until it was all over, and then we went in. And the airlines, it's not over, but it's a little bit the same story. Years of consolidation and bankruptcies. 3, 4, 5, 6 big bankruptcies already in the airlines.
So for 50 years, you've continually read about these industries, even though you have disdain for them.
Yes, I talked about patience. I read Barron's for 50 years. In 50 years, I found one investment opportunity in Barron's, out of which I made about $80 million with almost no risk. I took the $80 million and gave it to Lee Lu, who turned it into $400 or $500 million. So I have made $400 or $500 million out of reading Barron's for 50 years and following one idea. Now that doesn't help you very much, does it? I'm sorry, but that's the way it really happened. If you can't do it, I didn't have a lot of ideas. I didn't find them that easily, but I did pounce on one.
Which one was that? Which idea was that?
It was a little automotive supply company. Anyway, it was a cigar butt.
Is that K&W?
No. This was, I've forgotten the name of it, but it was it was the Monroe shock absorber and all that stuff. The stock was $1, and the junk bonds was paid 11 3/8%, were 35. And when I bought the junk bonds, they paid me the 35%, and they went right to 107 when they called. You know, it was, and then the stock went from 1 to 40, but of course I sold my stock at 15. But
so what did the article in Barron's say?
Yeah, what was it?
It said it was a cheap stock.
Only one, right?
But that's a very funny way to watch for 50 years and act once.
How long did it take you to make the 15 bagger on that?
What?
How long did it take to make the 15x on that stock? It went from 1 to 15, right?
Maybe a couple of years.
How long did it take you to make the decision to buy it once you read the article?
Oh, about an hour and a half.
What was it about that company, an auto supply company, that was
Well,
a bad
I kind of knew, based on experience, how sticky some of that auto secondary market was, and how many old cars needed Monroe shock absorbers. And I just knew it was too cheap. I didn't know it would work for sure, but I knew that I just, as I say, people were afraid it was going to go broke, obviously, if their bonds were selling at 35.
Harley, how do you define the edge of circle of competency?
What?
What's your definition of your circle of competency?
Well, each person's is his own, but it really helps to know what you can do and what you can't. I got whole things. I don't like to gamble against odds. I have not lost $1,000 in my life betting against racetracks, casinos. If the odds are against me, I just don't play. I don't even want to amuse myself playing against the odds. Now, I have occasionally played bridge against better players where I'm really playing for the instruction which I can afford. But that's because I like the learning. But I won't do very much even of that. I do not like playing against the odds.
Could you maybe say one name that you invested in when you ran your partnership that performed beautifully for you, and explain as a case study what it was about that company that attracted you? Because there's not much about the Munger-Wheeler partnership.
Well, but I had all kinds of things in those days. First place, in those days we had what were called Jewish treasury bills. And that was event arbitrage. If a company sells out $100 a share and the stock's selling at 95, for 60 years, people who just went in and bought the stock at 95 and made the 20% per annum with a little leverage. For 60 years, Graham Newman, Warren, I, and Goldman Sachs made 20% per year on anything we did in event arbitrage. What happened was when the stockbrokers were all on commission, the deal's announced, every stockbroker can call his client and say, oh, your stock is way up. Maybe you should sell that. You know, they're getting commission. So you had dumb selling. And so, of course, we did well. Nowadays, the people do not do all that well in event arbitrage. It's too tough. The deals are, it's just too crowded. But it just worked fine for all those years. We did all kinds of things in those days we can't do anymore.
I was speaking with Rick Guerin, and he was saying that if he was to start a fund today, he wouldn't do it. And he says he doesn't think it's hard because the size of a fund like Berkshire limits you to large companies. He just doesn't think that there's the same opportunities anywhere.
There aren't. That's why people come to this meeting.
Speaking of opportunities, Charlie, could you talk a little bit about your thoughts on John Malone as an operator and what you think about the cable industry's moat going forward?
I do not. I've always been troubled by the cable industry. For one thing, it was thinly disguised bribery when they got the franchises. I don't like to even think about a lot of scummy places that are getting their franchises by bribery. So I've sort of ignored it. I didn't want to think about it. Malone is obviously something of a genius, and he's a fanatic and doesn't like to pay taxes, and he's been very successful. And I've just ignored it. I just don't want to think about it, so I haven't. I can afford the luxury, and I don't have to think about everything. But the starting bribery that got the franchises, I just didn't like it. And so I just haven't thought about it, and I'm still not thinking about it. And the movie business I don't like either because it's been a bad business. And crooked labor unions, crazy agents, crazy screaming lawyers, idiosyncratic stars taking cocaine. It's just not my, it's just not my field. And I just don't want to be in it. And these other stuff, I find enough of the other stuff that I like. We've got so many places in Berkshire that just do their work pretty well. I like that. You'll be amazed. The Cease Candy, they make the good candy they work on. We got lots of places like that. Our utility business, we probably have the best run utilities in the United States. We care more about satisfying the regulators. We care more about safety records. We care more about everything we should care about. When we bought Northern Natural Gas, which Enron owned, of course, to show more earnings and more cash, they just done no maintenance. A goddamn pipeline can blow up and kill people. And the minute the ink dried on that, everybody took 6 months off, and we sent all these pigs through the pig is a special name for. We went through the pipelines, and we just caught up on all the deferred maintenance. We were not interested in killing people. That's the right way to behave. Enron is the wrong way to behave. Imagine deferring the maintenance on a pipeline so you can show more cash. It's disgusting. It's like killing people on purpose so you can make more money. I mean, it's deeply immoral. And so, but they fix it fast. Of course, I'm glad to be associated with people who behave like that. Greg Abel's a terrific operator and a terrific guy, and he actually, in Iowa, Nebraska has public power. So they did not, they borrow tax exempt, build a new plant with General Electric, they're paying 3% on the debt or something. And he could run a big public power agency. Our Iowa utility that Greg Abel runs, right across the river, his rates are miles below Nebraska Public Power, entirely financed, which, you know, and the other utility in Iowa, our rates are half theirs. Well, of course I like being associated with a company that can deliver the power quite reliably. And more than 50% of all the power in Iowa comes from the wind. So and the farmers are glad to have a few wind machines out among the corn. And so we just quietly created a revolution there. The regulators, the customers, everybody likes it. Of course I like people who do that, and Berkshire's full of that stuff.
Do you think that cheaper solar over time, as it continues to get cheaper and cheaper, does that pose any potential threat to the utility business as people kind of take on their own generation? Like, is there any potential for a death spiral there?
Well, Berkshire has something like $8 billion worth of solar, almost all of it in California. We got take-or-pay contracts from the two big utilities. And so we have, and the way we leveraged it is like financial line, we'll probably get 15 or 18% or some ridiculous return on our equity. And just sitting on our ass while these little mirrors sit out there in the field. Oh, you have to polish them once in a while. And they'll get better, but they won't get 50%. They'll get, there's a limit to how much better they can get. And the first one we had, they tracked not at all, they just lay there. The second one, they track east to west, but not for the celestial stuff that goes on, changing the seasons. The next ones will be pointed right at the sun through every kind of, and that all makes it, but there's a limit to how efficient that stuff can get. On the other hand, since it's free and coming in from the sun and doesn't pollute, and there's a lot of worthless desert in the United States, it's a pretty sensible way to get power eventually. And so, of course, there's going to be more and more of it. And
but you don't think the ability to generate electricity at home or on a business's own property, is that going to be some sort of threat at some point to the revenue model for all the capital?
Well, people try and make money out of that crap. I am very skeptical about all this home stuff. That works if the utility will pay twice what the power is worth. Then you can reduce your electricity bill. Well, why should the utility pay for twice what the power is worth? You know, and so we think it's more efficient to have some big place like us create the solar and just sell it to the utility.
Do you talk to Ted and Todd, the new investment guys at Berkshire, much?
Not much, but I talk to them some, and they're different. It's like they're clones, but they're both good in their own way, and they both love Berkshire, and they both made contributions.
Did you think of the incentive where each one gets 20% of their compensation from the other one's performance? Who thought of that incentive? I thought that was that was brilliant.
It's brilliant, but I don't think it's changed things at all. It's my own idea, and it looks good to you people. It looked good to me when I did it. I don't think it's changed any behavior at all.
Charlie, how do you feel about auto dealerships with their service component and the low capital requirements?
Well, that is very interesting. I don't want to be in the bottom 80% of the auto dealer business. I think these people are well up in the top 20. And so if we've got 80 dealerships making $3 million a year after taxes. That's $240 million. You have all these dealer protection laws. It's entrenched. We take the real estate, which tends to be very good, and stick it in our insurance companies where it's a decent insurance asset. It's what I call okay.
So that's great then.
No, it's not great. It's okay.
If it's okay to you, it must be pretty great.
No, it isn't. No, it's not pretty good to me. It's okay. I would prefer doing it to not doing it, but there's nothing exciting about buying a bunch of auto dealerships.
Also, Charlie,
but if you got $90 billion afloat,
sure.
You know, the idea of buying a bunch of auto dealerships that dominates. It's okay.
Also, do you know Norbert Liu of Punch Card Capital, and do you have any thoughts on him?
I don't know him.
Okay.
So, why should I know him?
Charlie, going off of the auto question, I mean, what do you think about the advent of self-driving cars? How's that going to affect the ecosystem on insurance, scrap value, resale value, supply chain?
Well, it could. You could change things so much that Geico would be a bad business. Everything can change. That's the nature of the game, is that your great businesses are being eroded by something at all times. I think it's a long time in the future. I think it's a very complicated subject. After all, if you're in a self-driving car, it works better if all the things are being self-driven by the same people. We have that already. The monorails don't have operators. Nobody's driving the monorail. But that's one guy owns the whole thing, including the roadway. The minute you're sharing the roadway with a lot of other people, if I'm driving it on the road and some guy goes up and stands there with a machine gun, I will turn around and I'll do something. The goddamn computer won't. He's not programmed to care about machine guns.
Charlie, what do you make of the legacy that you and Warren have left? I mean, do you have any idea of the sort of impact you had worldwide, or does it always surprise you?
On what?
On investing, on just basically thinking, not just investing, but just
Well, I think we've had some effect. But they're still teaching the efficient market theory in the business. And the old ideas died hard. And by the way, it's roughly right. It's just the very hard form, which everybody believed.
Really?
They believed it was impossible. They didn't think it was rare. They thought efficiency was absolutely inevitable. It was like physics. I call it physics envy. That's what they had in the finance field. They wanted to make their subject like physics. Now, what kind of a nut would want to make stock markets like physics? It ain't like physics. It's more like a mob at a football game.
Sean, do you need a hand with that? And that's how you open the can.
I've opened quite a few too.
Charlie, would you like to know why I think you should know who Norbert Liu is?
Yeah.
Because he follows the Munger system. His hedge fund is called Punch Card Capital, based on the philosophy of punch card investing. And since 2008, he's killed the markets and done well for his investors by being invested in just 3 stocks: Wells Fargo, Berkshire Hathaway, and Baidu. I just thought you'd be interested.
Well, I think I am interested, and I'm not surprised. And I'm not surprised it's worked. It's just what I recommended. And he's picked some of the same stocks.
Right. Well, he admires you very much.
Well, think of what a simple way that was to get rich.
Right.
I'm going to share this with you, gentlemen, because otherwise I'll eat it all.
Since you can open the box, we expect to see you here for another 10 or 15 minutes.
I'm going to say, what the hell is... You open one box and you get another.
That's right. Charlie, were you surprised on election day?
Of course. Of course I was surprised on election day.
Did you lose sleep for a few days?
What?
Did you lose sleep for a few days?
Well, no, because I expect to be disappointed with politics.
So Charlie, you were able to change Warren from Ben Graham to high quality companies. Was there any change that he brought in your life? Any of your systems?
Well, I didn't change him that much. You know, Warren would have gotten there anyway. Maybe I accelerated it 6 months. But Warren would have figured out that what he was doing wouldn't scale.
Hey, Charlie, you talk a lot about your granddad, but I hardly hear you talk about your dad, Alfred Munger. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about some lessons he taught you.
Well, I was very fond of my dad. My grandfather Munger was more disciplined than my father. My father made a good income as a lawyer, which he carefully spent except for his life insurance and his houses and so on. My grandfather always saved his money. And when the Great Depression came, he could save the whole rest of the family. And so, naturally, I remember him more when I talk about the investors.
And the Alfred Munger Foundation? Yeah.
I was named after my father.
And what does
That's
that
not
do?
my grandfather.
Right, and what does that do? That
Well, I'm going to give away all that money before I'm dead if I last a little longer. It's not that much money.
What do you want to give it to?
Whatever appeals to me at the time. I don't ask anybody.
How do you think about creating impact through philanthropy?
What?
How do you think about creating impact through your philanthropy?
Doing what?
Through giving away money. How do you
I do
think
it
about creating
myself. I
impact?
give anything out again, please. Regardless, it's a tax-exempt bunch of Munger money. I've got no staff. I just do it.
Do you have any criteria that you follow, or what kind of change are you trying to create?
I do it when I want to do it, and I give where I want to give it.
What are your hopes for your grandchildren?
Well, naturally, we hope the grandchildren do well. And any grandchild, I've got one who's running a little tiny partnership. But my grandchildren are all doing different things, and I got one at Google. He's a computer software engineer.
Are there any other periodicals besides Barron's that you've read for 50 years? And do you have any more inspiring anecdotes from the either Forbes, Fortune, Wall Street Journal?
Bloomberg Business Week.
I've read Fortune for 60 years.
Fortune for 60?
I've never bought a stock. I was not kidding about that deferred gratification.
Isn't it true that you got a new car when you were like in your 50s or 60s? That was the first new car?
I bought them for my wives, but I always bought a Cadillac that was about 3,000 miles on it, way cheaper. I flew around in coach airplanes. And I used to go to the Berkshire Hathaway meetings and coach, and Berkshire Shore would stand up. They were all in coach too. And they'd stand up and clap.
Hey, Charlie.
Yeah.
I wanted to read you a quote and get your opinion on it. My religion consists of a humble admiration of the illimitable superior spirit who reveals himself in the slight details we're able to perceive with our frail and feeble mind.
Sounds like that's not some scientist.
It's Einstein.
Yeah, well, that's the way he felt.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't have his idea. He was good at puzzles. Physics was a big puzzle to him. And so he naturally loved that great puzzle and this puzzle maker in the sky. That it made it difficult, but you could figure it out. I'm different from Einstein. Of course, I couldn't figure out the puzzles the way he did.
Can you rephrase that? I didn't understand the answer.
Well, Einstein has his own slant on religion. There's certainly no conventional theology in Einstein. He's not talking about being nice to other people or anything like that. He just thought there must be some God out there that created these wonderful puzzles for me to solve. That's a peculiar kind of a religion. But that was Einstein.
Charlie, you mentioned that one of your greatest achievements was family, having a family. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you would do differently with the family, or things that you did really well with the family in terms of investing into the family?
Well, I had a lot of children, educated them all, and I take the results as they fall. What else can you do with a family? And I have a lot of very admirable children, some of whom are out there today. And that's a huge blessing. One of the things I like about them is that they're decent, generous people. One of my daughters who was there, she had a friend who was married to a total jerk, straitened circumstances, bitter divorce. My daughter just bought her a house. I think she owns the house, but this other family lives in it.
What's your opinion?
That's a nice, generous thing to do if you're rich.
Wow.
I'm glad I have children like that, not like some are rich.
What's your opinion of the giving pledge?
Well, I told Gates that I wouldn't do it. Because I've already flouted it. When Nancy died, community property stayed. She left it up to me to decide where it went. But I knew she would want it to go to the children. Every wife, always afraid the old man will have his money taken away by some nurse or something, his dotage. I knew Nancy would want it to go right to the children. So I shunted more than half the Munger fortune, quite a bit more than half to the children. So I've already totally violated the spirit of the Gates pledge. I said, Bill, I'm not going to publicly be a spokesman for something I've already totally flouted. And I flouted it because I knew my wife, who had helped me all these years, would have wanted it that way. I'm not a good example for his pledge. So I won't do it. I won't pretend to be doing something I really didn't do.
Charlie, it may be a little too personal, but
What?
It may be a little too personal, but is there anything that you'd like to share about your wife, Mrs. Munger?
Yeah, we'd like that.
I'm going to say is, a long life has many disappointments and agonies in it. I watched a sister die a horrible death of Parkinson's disease, dying young, 64. I lost my first son to leukemia, miserable, slow death. And at the end, he kind of knew it was coming. And I'd been lying to him all along. It was just so awkward. And it was just pure agony. And you just have some of those agonies that are going to happen. There's not so much agony when somebody's really old dies. You know, they deteriorate so much you almost don't miss them, which I'm doing a good job of. But no, I think you just take the hardships as they come. You take the blessings as they come. And you have fun out of figuring out the puzzles as best you can. It's really, we're very blessed to have that. And we're in the United States. We're not in India. We're not under some crazy dictator like Russia. We live where everybody, they got to bribe India. We got a lot to be thankful for here. And we have a lot of options. We can change jobs, we can move around, we can do this or that. We get a huge admixture here with all the cultures of the world without having to travel. So we're not restricted to one narrow little group of Bulgarian farmers making olive oil or something. We got this great mixture of people who are quite interesting and quite different, and they're all cross-marrying, which makes it even more interesting. And it's amazing to me there was a lot of anti-Jewish prejudice when I was young. And now every family I know, you know, they're all cross-married. I don't have a friend hardly with a big family who doesn't have a Jewish in-law. It's all, and the old ideas have sort of died.
How did you meet your wife, and how did she accept you?
Wife, 52 years, and died 7 years ago. That was mutual friends who introduced us. We were both divorced, both the same age, both had 2 children. And all I can say is I owe a debt of gratitude to the people that introduced us.
Charlie, I've heard you and Monish both talk a lot about the power of cloning great ideas, and I was wondering what you think about the flaws or limitations or dangers of cloning. For example, when you're not true to yourself, like when does one get in trouble with cloning when it doesn't work?
Well, cloning is, of course, it's not an ambiguous word when you use it biologically. But when you take it into some other field, cloning is a very interesting idea. You do remove ideas from one place and bring them into another. And if that's cloning, I do it all the time.
Charlie, can you take us?
I like cloning.
Can you take us back when you bought the Buffalo News paper and just the stress that you had to go through, because it looked like it was going to go under, right, at one point for a while, right? Well, take us the story about the Buffalo News.
We were never the weakest in the town. So we were betting that we'd be the survivor. And we were. So it was unpleasant because we showed no return for a long time. But when the other guy finally turned up his toes, we suddenly started making a lot of money. So it just was delayed gratification. It was 7 years of like no profits.
Wow.
And it disappears and the sky rains gold.
On the note of
the earnings went from nothing to 70 million a year as pre-tax. Boom, boom.
On the topic of cloning, do you really believe, as Manisha said, that if investors look at 14 Fs of super investors, that they can beat the market by picking their spots? And we'll add spin-offs.
It's a very plausible idea. And I have encouraged one young man to look at it. So I can hardly say that it has no merit. Of course it's useful, if I were you people, to look at what other people you regard as great investors are doing for ideas. The trouble with it is that if you pick people as late in the game as Berkshire Hathaway, you're buying our limitations caused by size. You really need to do it from some guy that's operating in smaller places and finding places with more advantage. And of course it's hard to identify the people in the small game. But it's not an idea that won't work. If I were you people, of course I would do that.
What do you mean?
I would want to know exactly what the shrewd people were doing, and I would look at every one of them, of course. That would be a no-brainer for me.
What do you mean by you encourage one young man to pursue it? What do you mean?
Well, the young man's my grandson, who has a fair amount of money and fascinated by securities, and so I advised him, why don't you start there?
Do you think the equity positions within Berkshire?
So it's Monisha's idea.
Do you think the equity positions in Berkshire will do better for Berkshire going forward, or the wholly owned businesses, operating businesses?
Well, I think the wholly owned businesses will, because we won't be paying any taxes on selling them. And I think they'll continue to grow, and I think they'll do better. I think the wholly owned businesses of Berkshire, or the 80% owned, or what have you, are on average better than the businesses, let's say the S&P. So I think we'll do better in that part than the S&P, and I don't think our stocks located in a corporation subject to taxation will do enough better than the A&P to even pay the taxes. But if we're buying the stocks with the float in some insurance company, of course the world changes. But no, I would say that, of course, if you buy Berkshire, you should not be buying it on the strength of its little its portfolio. Look, we get $8 billion. That's the biggest market cap in the country. It took a considerable period to get $8 billion into it. And it's not that big a deal with a 400 billion market cap. And it's not that, it was easier to get into it than other things. No, people who buy Berkshire, when you bought Berkshire back 30 or 40 years ago, you were getting a bunch of marketable securities at a discount, and all the businesses were free. And of course, those people made a lot of money. We outperformed the market by miles in those days, and the businesses did well. And now we've got businesses that are averaging out doing well, and Our marketable securities are a small percentage of our cap. There were years when we had more marketable securities per share than our book value per share. Now it's quite different. And of course, the market at its present multiples is it's a different world. No, but the one thing about Berkshire that's interesting is we do get some opportunities other people don't get. If you're 3G and want a partner for your next deal, who the hell are they going to come to? They know we're a good partner. So we see stuff other people don't see. That helps.
Sorry. Charlie, moving on to one of the smaller positions in Berkshire's portfolio, there was a recent position made in SiriusXM. Could you talk about
what?
SiriusXM? Could you talk at all about radio assets and your outlook on radio assets with
I don't know anything about radio assets except that it's a very mature market. And goddamn radio is basically an auto market. Not to listen to the radio. People driving. Very peculiar. And it's totally concentrated. I don't know even what. I never think about it.
How much of your success can be attributed to Occam's razor and Kelly's formula?
Well, Occam's razor is, of course, a good idea. It's a basic idea. And it's like, Occam's razor is like telling a fisherman to fish where the fish are. Of course, you'll do better than fishing where the fish are. You know,
in those businesses that are not wholly owned, but maybe 85% owned, the 15% ownership, when there's massive investment within that business, how does that affect the ownership of the 15%?
Take Nebraska Furniture Mart, owned by the parts of the Blumkin family, didn't want to sell it. They love the business. They're very rich. They have an enormous portfolio of marketable securities within there, you know, that came out of money left in there, 20%, because a lot of surplus money they've accumulated that's outside the furniture business. And it's very interesting. Warren says to those people, who he treats kind of like sons, you know, they live in the same community. And he lets them control the dividend policy of the company. It doesn't make much difference to us. The dividends are mostly tax-free. He said, whatever dividend policy, we own 80% of it. So he says to the minority owners, just choose the dividend policy of the whole company. whatever you want is fine with me. Warren's always doing things like that with the right people. So is Lilo. I tell you a story about Lilo that you will like. You know, General Electric was famous for always negotiating down to the wire. And just before they were closed, they'd have one final twist. And of course, it always worked. The other guy was all invested and so on. So everybody feels robbed and cheated and mad. But they get their way at that last final twist. And people have. So Lino made a couple of venture capitalist investments with the field, and he made this one with this guy. They had made us a lot of money in a previous deal, and we're now going in with him again on another. Very high-grade guy and very smart and so forth. So now we come to the General Electric moment. Leo says, I have to make one change in this investment. It sounds just like General Electric, just about to close. I didn't tell you, he did it himself. He said, you know, this is a small amount of money to us, and you got your whole net worth in it. I cannot sign this thing if you won't let me put in a clause saying if it all goes to hell, we'll give you your money back. That was the change he wanted. Now you can imagine how likely we were to see the next venture capital investment. And nobody has to tell Lilu to do that stuff. Some of these people, it's in the gene power. It's just such a smart thing to do. It looks generous, and it is generous.
Is there a little
but it's also a huge self-interest in it.
Is there a little reciprocity opportunity there?
What?
For that.
Well, it's the right way to behave anyway. Yeah. And the second way, it helps you. And Berkshire's helped by its past behavior too. to see things that other people don't see. But how many people would Sumner Redstone have ever done that? Would General Electric have ever done that? That whole culture of behaving otherwise.
Ben Franklin talked about morality being the best policy, but then you see the Sumner Redstones and the Icons and the Trumps doing really well by acting kind of the opposite from
Yes.
Lou and Lee Lu. How do you reconcile that and still come out with the what no doubt is the correct answer, that it's wiser to be moral?
Well, of course, Sumner Redstone and I graduated from Harvard Law School about a year or so apart, and he ended up with more money than I did. So you could say he's the success, but that's not the way I look at it. And so I don't think it's just a financial game, and it's I think it's better to do it the other way. And sometimes you think you're getting by with this, but General Motors has a letter they file out when they take something over. The letter says, "Dear Joe Schmo, major supplier to this business they've just bought, we're going to accomplish wonderful things together, and we blah, 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 blah. But we have to harmonize the systems of General Electric with blah, 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 blah. And you're going to be paid in 90 days instead of 30 days, which is just horrible imposition on the supplier. But they got a whole department that's just organized to brutalize the suppliers into furnishing all the money. They did that with one supplier that I know, and of course the sales manager said, "Well, don't tell them to go fuck themselves." And the guy said, "No, I won't do that." He says, "Just bring me all the stuff where General Electric is my customer, where they've got no alternative." And he just raised the prices by about 4 times.
How do you feel about
And,
into GE?
I think it's a mistake to be quite that brutal. Now they compete in GE based on who can get the suppliers to furnish more and more of the capital. They're very tough. Now, it's a great company with great products, and they've got some very good people. I think Jeff Immelt was a good guy, but I would be very uncomfortable doing that. My theory of life is win-win. I want suppliers that trust me, and I trust them, and I don't want to screw the suppliers as hard as I can.
So how did you feel when Berkshire bought the GE pipe?
What?
How did you feel when Berkshire put money into GE in the crisis?
Well, it was fine. It was sure to work. It was a high coupon. And it did work. When we buy something like that, we're not making a big moral judgment about the company. I don't think GE is that immoral. Averaged out, GE is one of our better companies. In terms of fanaticism about defect absence, and they're very good on that stuff.
Charlie, in your book, you said one of your...
But I want to get ahead, making a final twist on every deal just before the closing. I'm brutalizing all my suppliers to the last nickel on when I paid them. That's not my system.
So, Charlie, you said in your almond, this is one of the best deals you've ever encountered, the one that you didn't close with a snuff manufacturer.
Yeah.
Can you go a little bit more in detail on that? And we're both
That was Conwood. It's an addictive product. People are totally hooked. They're the number 2 person in the market. They all believed in their product. Every damn one of them chewed tobacco. And the figures were just unbelievable. There was virtually no financial risk. You were going to know nothing but money. And the cancers caused by that mouth tobacco is maybe 5% of the cancer you get from cigarettes. But it's not still. You definitely are going to kill people with that product who have no reason to die. It's the best deal we ever saw. We couldn't lose money doing it. And we passed. They didn't pay out. Jay Pritzker, who was then head of the trustees or something at the University of Chicago Medical School. Pritzkers are big in Chicago. He just snapped it up so fast. The Britzkers made $2 or $3 billion out of that. But do we miss the $2 or $3 billion we would easily have had? Not an iota. If we had a moment's regret, not an iota. We are way better off not making a killing out of a product we knew going in was a killing product. Why should we do that? On the other hand, if it was just a marketable security, we wouldn't feel that the morality of it was ours. But it's going to be our subsidiary. We're going to be paying the people that are advertising on tobacco. That's just too much for us. We're not going to do it.
Charlie, is there any one question you've anticipated being asked in your whole life that you've not been asked yet?
That's a good question. Why didn't they ask that?
Some people ask me this, what question should I ask you that will help me? Anyway.
Do you have a favorite Mrs. B story you can share with us?
Well, she was very peremptory and bossy. she was illiterate in English, although she was fluent in Yiddish. And she could make arithmetic complications in her head that you can't make. I mean, she knew exactly how many yards there were, 26 and a half by 104 and a quarter in her head. And she was there, but she was a very bossy, domineering, hardworking woman. And it was, she worked herself 100 hours a week, and she had sons-in-law who were the nicest people, and they worked maybe 50 hours a week after they were filthy rich. She called them those bums. We know a lot of characters.
Personal.
The other one is we bought a business from, it was half owned by a daughter of Moses Sannenberg. She was a very rich woman, and she owned half this business, which was her husband's business. And she was driving Cadillac. Her husband had died, but she had a company car and a Cadillac. And she wanted the Cadillac to go with her multi-zillion. And so she told her lawyer to ask Mr. Buffett if he'll give me the Cadillac. And she told the lawyer what to say. So, tell Warren, she said, that a lot of people give money to poor people. But that's easy. They get the reward and fulfillment of helping the poor and observing the tenets of religion. Just the real charity that's unusual is giving money to the rich. And so she made that pitch to Warren. The lawyer was very embarrassed to do it. To tell her I'll sell it to her the wholesale blue book, which she finally did. But she said, but she first made the pitch that we should give her the car because it was so much more generous to give to the rich. It was so more unusual. That woman had an adopted child who was a genius. And so she would rent Carnegie Hall and let the child conduct an orchestra. The rich can get quite eccentric.
Charlie, can you go back to the Nixon years when you bought the Washington Post and how that whole situation panned out?
The market cap of the Washington Post was $75 million when we bought it. You could have sold it in an afternoon, every single asset, for $400 or $500 million. So it was a good business, not just a Graham stock, but it was also a Graham stock because it was so cheap. And they also had a business that was likely to destroy its competitor, making it a monopoly. Now, it was only a tiny little amount of money could go in. That's what makes it hard for you people. It's a great investment, but maybe it would absorb $4 or $5 million.
Have you seen an opportunity like that since?
Which we did, and by the way, that maybe it was $10 million. We got $10 million into it. At the top, it was $1 billion, but we only did that once. So it's a great story, but now that helped us way back to have that extra $1 billion on our balance sheet. But that was an opportunity that would take billions of dollars. That's why what happens in the past in Berkshire can't happen again. That little opportunity for $10 million investment was wonderful. But we don't have a lot. If you look at Berkshire, you'd think we'd have 10 investments that are each up, say 10 times. We put in $1 billion and now it's 10 billion, and then we have 100 billion in 10 companies. But we don't. We had 3 or something. And it's not that damned easy to find these damn things that you can identify. It's not that damned easy.
Thank you again, Charlie, for all your continuous sharing. Really appreciate it.
No, I'm glad you guys are still having fun doing it, and I'm glad you're not discouraged. You shouldn't be, but you know, everybody who did the value investing in my generation and plugged away at it, you didn't have to be that smart even. They all did well. And yours is going to be more difficult. Yeah.
Is there a good...
But you know, you want something to do anyway. So that's kind of interesting to do. So the fact that it's difficult shouldn't discourage you that much.
Is there a good systematic approach to learning from one's mistakes, like so you don't repeat them? Is there something that's worked for you in terms of postmortems?
We were active enough so we had some mistakes to remember. It's hard to learn. We learned a lot vicariously because it's so much cheaper. But we also learned a lot from unpleasant experience. And so just doing it, you'll automatically get those mistakes. Nobody can avoid them. And of course you'll learn from everyone. Monish is good at post-mortem in his mistakes. And
what did you say when Dexter Shoes came up? Were you for it or against it at the time?
Well, I didn't look at it very hard. The company, it was loved by all the retailers. It was #1 supplier to JCPenney. It had surpassed everything. It was a solid earner. It dominated Maine. They were nice people. And of course, the Chinese hadn't come up by that time. They just came up so fast. And they just took no prisoners in the shoe business. And they weren't just cheaper by a little, they were half-priced. And of course, the shoe business is not that easy a business. Of course, people bought the half-price shoes. And the business just went to hell very fast. But that business, because it created such a huge lesson, and it looks awful in terms of what the Berkshire stock is worth. I mean, we're the main charity in Maine, if you call us. But at the time, it was 2% of 1 year's performance. That's what we lost by having that go to 0. So our return from 1 year went down by 2 percentage points. Now, to be sure, if we bought our own stock instead of this thing, you know, we're not giving away our stock. It's a huge error. But we learn from it. I just think if you just keep going, you'll make some mistakes, and of course you'll learn from them. How could you not learn from that one? We've learned how awful it is to have somebody who's really way lower priced come in hard, and how no amount of managerial skill could protect us. Now we have other shoe businesses, some little niches that make $20 million a year or something after taxes. Maybe a little bit of that is left over Dempster even, but we make do. But don't you all have mistakes?
Yes.
Yeah. That are painful.
Yes.
And haven't you learned from them?
Yep.
Yeah. And isn't that good?
Yep. Yes.
And so, but I don't know what I would do now if I were. I live surrounded by Capital Guardian people. I have over $1 trillion. And they hire all these guys that get A's in business school, and they treat them well, and they divide them up, and they get expertise in various places. And it doesn't work to beat the indexes. I knew that company when it was smaller, you know, 500 or 600 million, and they beat the indexes by a point a year. you know, which was fine because they were drawing the fees off the top and the clams. Now they've lagged by a point a year or whatever the hell it is. And they handle that the way by denial. They just don't face it. I was there the other day, and this very nice portfolio manager who's very smart, polished, generous, nice man. Assistant, very nice, polished, intelligent woman. And he said, well, you know, he says, we outperform in my fund, which has $100 billion, by 2 percentage points a year. I'm going to raise my eyebrow. I just look at him for a while. He said, well, I mean that we outperform our competitors by 2 percentage points a year. And I said, yes, and in that overperformance, a lot of it was a long time ago, and you had way less money. And there was another horrified pause, and finally the woman says, he's on to us. We're not to discuss something else. At any rate, it is awkward. You know, you want to keep getting paid, you like your line of work, you're flying around interviewing management and so forth. And when all is said and done, and they did it for a long time before, but it just got harder. And then I see people leave. They say, I can't manage $30 billion, I'll manage $3 billion, and now I'll outperform. And they've had that happen 2 or 3 times. And the new guys don't outperform either, because the new client still wants 10 stocks or something. Oh, and there's another experiment they've done about 3 times at Capital Guardian. You know, follow what the great investors are doing. That's one way. They said, we'll get the best idea from our best people, and we'll make a portfolio just of our best ideas from our best people. Nothing can be more plausible. They've done it 3 times and it's failed every time. Now, how would you predict that? Well, I can predict it because I know psychology. When you pound out an idea as a good idea, you're pounding it in. So by asking people for their best ideas, they were getting the stuff that people had most pounded in, so they believed. So of course it didn't work, and they stopped doing it because it didn't work. They didn't know why it didn't work because they haven't read the psychology books, but they knew it didn't work, so they stopped. And it's so plausible. I don't think that's true at Berkshire. I think at Berkshire, if you asked me and Warren for our best ideas, that would have worked. But it didn't work in a place like that. A more conventional manager. By the way, I don't think it would work that perfectly at Berkshire. I think it would work better than it did at Capital Guardian. But isn't that interesting that that would not work?
Is it still true you talk to Warren once a week now?
No. It'd be like talking to yourself. We don't have any new ideas. 87 and 93 of that. I mean, what the hell? Anyway, but the young men make some contribution. They cause us to think about things we wouldn't have thought about before. We would not have bought the airlines or the Apple if the young man hadn't come up with the idea. But once they did, Warren ran with it. And Warren's pretty great. It was hard to buy that much airline stock. Doesn't sound like much airline stock, you know, by Berkshire standards, but we had to be a hell of a percentage of the market in those areas for a pretty long time. It's very hard to manage a lot of money.
Must be an awkward conversation with Bill Gates after he bought the Apple stock.
What?
I said it must be an awkward conversation with Bill Gates after the Apple stock buy.
I don't. Bill Gates does not have any illusions on that subject. Bill Gates bought that $150 million with Apple. I think they sold it.
Right.
Yeah, and
that was a good buy.
Yeah, but it was not a good sale. Oh, I got another story for you. What like? Oh, here's another story.
I'm gonna steal peanut brittle.
That thing around Raleigh today. Al Gore has come into you fellows' business. And Al Gore's in your fellows' business, and he has made $300 or $400 million in your business. And he's not very smart. He drank a lot. He smoked a lot of pot as he coaxed through Harvard with a gentleman's C. But he had one obsessive idea that global warming was a terrible thing, and he understood he'd protect the world for it. So his idea when he went into investment counseling is he was not going to put any CO2 in the air. So he found some partner to go into investment counseling with, and he says, we're not going to have any CO2. But this partner's a value investor, and a good one. So what they did is Gore hired a staff to find people who didn't put CO2 in the air. And of course, that put him into services. Microsoft, and all these service companies were just ideally located. And this value investor picked the best service companies. So all of a sudden the clients are making hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're paying part of it to Al Gore. Now Al Gore has hundreds of millions of dollars in your profession. And he's an idiot. And it's an interesting story. And a true one.
Charlie, earlier you were talking about how...
So if you were idiots about global warming, and President Bush, your theory, by the way, it's not the only one. There's an investment, there's a leveraged buyout operator in Los Angeles that I know casually. He's made 35% per annum for 30 years. All he buys is service companies. And instead of buying 100% and letting the management have 10, he always tries to buy 60 and let the old manager who created the company own the other 40. And he buys nothing but service companies, and he knows a lot about it. And with that formula, which inventories, receivables, are all kinds of horrible things in business that you just buy service companies you can avoid. And it's amazing how well it's worked for. It worked for this guy who does the LBOs just the way it worked for Al Gore, 35% per annum. And he's smart because he's causing the people to have more of their own skin in the game. They know more about it. They're more like partners, instead of the new manager's not an employee. They really, some other guy was 40 and you own 60, that's a different relationship. And he's the founder. But what a clever way to do it. And it worked better. And of course, he knows more about it when he does nothing but service companies. I know another guy who does nothing but mail order internet companies, also an LBO operator. He's made 20-some% per annum for a long, long time. But he knows more about getting customers and this ratio, and he knows more about these damn mail order internet companies. And he really knows a lot. So two specialists, each one of a different specialty, both working. Interesting. And that's why I made all the talk about the specialization frequently works. I find it more fun to go on and do everything, but these specialists do better, averaged out. They know a lot.
So how is our little mail order business, Oriental Trading, doing? And did they give you
That's one of this guy's. This guy sold that.
Oh, okay.
Not to us, but to one previous to us. Well, it's a very humdrum damn business, but it's right there in Omaha. It's a non-event. It may be better than something else we put insurance float into, but it's not. It's going nowhere. But if your float costs you nothing, and you suddenly make 10-12% on it, it's beguiling. We got enough float now. Speaking of that, Ajit, there have only been 2 transactions like that in the history of the world, 10 billion each. Ajit does both of them. If you wanted to do
with AIG?
You want what?
New reinsurance with AIG?
Yeah, that's the second one. But where else is AIG going to go for? Who would you trust to pay off a lot of stuff 30 years from now, except Berkshire? Nobody. Well, it's nice to be in that position. And we get along with them.
Charlie, do you still do, in the past, do you do a lot of work still with Ron Burkle in the supermarket finance?
I have not seen Ron Burkle in 35 years. He always tells people what a great friend he is of mine. I liked Ron Burkle's father, who was our last customer for trading stamps. And I like Ron when he was eager, but Ron, when he's made a lot of money, is a bit insufferable. Yeah, I mean, no, he's my good friend if you listen to him.
Because you show up in pretty much every biography of him that's ever written.
The one he really knows is Bill Clinton because he furnished him with girls. He's talking about he's had other friendships that are closer.
When you look at what's made you and Warren have relatively happy lives, is there some aspect of that that's imitable for the rest of us?
Well, it's all imitable. If your marriage reasonably works, and if your family life reasonably works, that doesn't mean perfectly, because nobody's family life works perfectly, particularly with the children. And if your partnerships work well, we have had marvelous partners. Warren's been a marvelous partner for me. I've been a good partner for him. All of our other subsidiary partnerships, which don't overlap totally, have been marvelous. I do not have a big failed partnership of any kind. But that's because I am a good partner. And Warren is a good partner. And so it's like, if you want a good spouse, deserve one. If you want to have a good partner, be a good partner. It's a very simple system, and it's worked very well. Of course, it wouldn't work without it. And also, get rid of the bureaucracy. You deal with good people you trust. Expense, trouble, lawyers checking. We're always closing something with no audit. We basically are very old-fashioned. We bought the Northern Natural Pipelines. They needed money Monday, and it was like Saturday. And it was lots of money. We came up with it. The lawyers were having a fit. We just gave them the money and took the pipeline. Worked out the details later. And other people can't do that. Their whole culture is, there are all kinds of bureaucrats that want something to do. They can't make an exception.
Going back to Enron, do you have any insight into whether Kinder Morgan would be a successor or a rejecter of Enron culture?
Well, I don't think Kinder Morgan is anything like Enron in the sense of Enron is total fraud and bullshit and craziness and manipulation. They went berserk, and Kinder Morgan may puff a little and pretend that cash flow is really cash and there isn't really an obligation to replace it. He may, but it's not Enron. Enron was just pure, disgusting, awful. And I think most of those limited partnerships have a slight touch of the old mining companies on the San Francisco Exchange. And they've all paid monthly dividends as they got into the ore. And of course, once they'd done that, they had two divisions. They had a Shuck the Suckers division on the mining exchange in San Francisco, and a bunch of miners who mined the mine. It was like a two-handle pump. They'd flood the mine, the stock would go down, they'd buy it. They'd pump the water out of the mine, pay a big monthly dividend, up. They're shucking suckers over here by kind of fraudulent, illegal, by modern standards, and the mine it was disgusting, but to some extent the master limited partnerships, they pretend that the cash is really free, when a lot of it really isn't. It's sort of, they're taking out money the business is going to need to replace what it's doing. in that sense, is sort of a mildly immoral way of doing things, and they're doing it because they can get by with it. Do you have a different view about the master limited partnership?
Now it's crazy how they raise so much equity. Where they were, like they issued equity, like raising $200 million.
Yeah, well, it was kind of dishonorable. I the old conglomerate business where they issued the stock and then if the stock sell 30 times earnings, keep buying a bunch of ordinary business. That was like a chain letter game. It was dishonorable. There's a lot that goes on in finance that's dishonorable.
So what do you think about the last couple of books that have been written about you? And if there was an author here, what would you tell him if he was writing a book about you?
I haven't read what recent books you're talking about.
Like the Tao of Charlie Munger? Or
I never finished it.
Damn it. Any thoughts on the books that have been written about you?
Well, since I don't finish them, I'm not... Of course, people are going to tend to look about stuff that's written about them and it's distributed. But when they just copy old quotes and so forth,
it's not.
Why should I read it?
Hey, Charlie. I believe you said that if you could have lunch with anybody, it would be Benjamin Franklin. And if you did, what would you ask him, or what would you talk about?
Well, it's hard for all that. Benjamin Franklin has already taught me what I want to know because he left such a record and his biographers have been so good and he was so famous in his own lifetime and for so long. So I already have had my conversations with Benjamin Franklin. He actually gave us the autobiography. And then the various biographies I've read, piece and the rest of the story. It was interesting that in the end he failed in his relationship with his only surviving son, who was loyal to the crown, and that rupture never healed. And it was just too much. Ben thought his son had a duty not to publicly have a big fight with his father who had raised him and gotten his fancy position with the crown for him and everything else. And the son felt that he was going to protect the position he had. You can understand how they'd feel that way. Most people wouldn't do that. They would reconcile somehow, or pretend to reconcile. But that really ruptured. He didn't even talk to that son at the end.
Charlie,
which is interesting. And Franklin was capable of having more resentment than I have. I have conquered resentment better than Franklin did. I'm not that mad about the people I disapprove of. That's why I kissed off that Trump stuff by making him a compliment today. I don't think much of Trump, as you can imagine. Imagine me voting for Hillary Clinton. It was very hard to push the pen. But I did.
Are you hungry?
No, I'm fine. I've been eating brittle. I'm going to leave it a minute. Is Oscar out there?
No, Jerry would like to meet with you for a little bit.
Okay, I think I should.
Now?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.